Have you ever frozen in the key moment of making a critical decision? Whether it's in business or in life, it can cost you everything. Commander's Intent will teach and inspire you how to lead with clarity, courage, and purpose. So here's your host, retired Air Force Colonel, fighter pilot, and your leadership mentor, Derek Oaks.
Welcome to another episode of Commander's Intent. I'm here this afternoon with my friend Dan Laguna. He's a longtime Special Forces, special operator in terms of both as a Green Beret and as a helicopter pilot with the 160th SOAR. And then since then, he has been in business. He has been in flight operations all around the world, and he's consulted with multiple militaries all around the world. And I consider him a friend, and he's one of my personal heroes. And I appreciate him being on the show with us today. I don't know anybody that has faced these kind of realities more than you, and that is making hard decisions. You're choosing between the lesser of two evils, or you're choosing the bigger win versus the other win. And in the military, we often choose between which compatriot, which comrade lives and which one doesn't. What birthdays are we going to be at and which we aren't going to be at? And sometimes we don't get that choice even, but they're tough decisions. And that translates into, we're talking about military from a military perspective, but I think that translates into life in general. Anybody who's trying to live a full life is going to face decisions where you have to make a tough call. Do I spend my time at work, or do I spend my time taking care of this responsibility, or do I spend it with my kid? Do I focus on this part of my job or this other part of my job, knowing that whatever you don't choose is going to lose out, and then you always feel like you're losing. And you shared some stories with me, and I wanted to start by talking about that little Iraqi girl from when you were a contractor.
Yes. So the little Iraqi girl that you're speaking about is, one day we were protecting the U.S. ambassador, and the way we do that was fly two helicopters, two little birds, over the top of his convoy. And we follow him all the way to his venue, wherever he's going to have a meeting. And then we escort him back into the green zone, back to the embassy. Well, this one particular day, we got him out to the meeting site safely. We stayed there, came back with him, put him back to the green zone. He was safe. And about the time that we've got him back to the U.S. Embassy, I heard a very loud explosion, which we heard almost every day. But this particular day we were fairly close. And as soon as I heard the loud explosion, I knew the ambassador was safe into the embassy grounds. So I turned around and told the guys, my wingman, follow me, let's go. Let's go find out if we can help somebody, in case we didn't know if it was American or not, or coalition forces, but it happened to be American forces. And what had happened was the U.S. Army Humvee hit an IED and exploded, turned upside down, and they had 4 people inside. So we got there shortly after the explosion, and when I flew overhead, looked at it, my door gunners are saying that they could see the 4 individuals laying outside the vehicle. A couple were moving around a little bit, and one of the guys was not moving at all. He was just laying there, looked to be unconscious. So I came in, flew under some power lines, landed next to the vehicle. Typically, I wouldn't do that because you don't know if there's another IED
right there, yeah,
right close to you or somebody else. But we knew that that particular person probably needed help, and the only way I could do it quickly was get there. The door gunner jumped out and helped him. Now, typically, we have 2 pilots on the aircraft, and we have 2 door gunners. And most of the time, one of those door gunners is trained like a paramedic, your 18 Delta Special Forces medic. Very good medical skills. So I landed. We had the other aircraft orbiting overhead for pulling security while I was on the ground. And as he was out, I had the co-pilot stay on the controls. I grabbed my weapon in case we had somebody coming from the opposite side where I was facing. And so the medic jumps out. He's working with the guy on the ground that was injured. And about 2-3 minutes later, in the distance off to my left front, there was a building with some hedge row around it. And I looked and I saw movement. I looked again, and an Iraqi guy jumped up. And I thought, oh, this is probably the guy that set off the IED or the explosion. And I got my weapon up, and then he ducked down. Then the next time he got back up, he had a girl in his arms. And I found out later she was about 7 years old. And he started walking towards me, and the helicopter's running. I can't hear much because obviously the engine's running. And I kept putting my hand up to get him to stop, not coming any closer, because I didn't know. Who knows?
If there was a bomb on her, yeah.
A bomb on her, because that's what they do, or he has a suicide vest. And I didn't want to take that chance. And I was really getting ready to shoot this guy if he wouldn't stop, because he wasn't taking instructions to stop. Luckily, off the nose to the right of the aircraft, we had another guy there. It was with the Humvee, and I believe he was an interpreter for those guys. So I called him over real quick to the aircraft, and he came over to me on my left door, and I said, "Get out there and stop this guy, or I'm going to shoot him." And he runs over there carefully, holding his weapon on the guy in case he was going to do something that he wasn't expecting. But anyway, he got to the guy. He got the guy to stop. And he was communicating. Obviously, I couldn't hear what he was saying. But when he brought that guy with the girl in his arms to my left door where I was sitting, and he said, "Hey, sir, this guy wants you to take this girl to the hospital." I looked at her, and from the explosion, her body was pretty much almost cut in half. Her stomach and her intestines were hanging out. She was turning chalky. And then at that same time, the door gunner's coming back telling me, "Hey, boss, we got to get this guy to the hospital. He's going to die." And so at that time, this was probably one of the most difficult decisions. And for a couple of days, it bothered me a lot. The decision I made was, I looked at the girl, I looked at the guy, and the girl, to me, the little girl, I just felt in my gut, in my heart, that she was not going to make it, no matter what. So the decision, I can only take one in that little bird. I can only throw one person to bat. That's all there's room for. And I made a decision with the interpreter to tell the guy, "Move back away from the aircraft. I'm not taking that girl." And we threw the soldier on board and took off. So for me, it was a decision. I questioned myself nonstop. Could I have taken the girl, saved her, and the guy could have, our paramedic, door gunner, could have stayed with him, worked with him until I got her to the hospital and came back. It could have been 5 to 10 minutes. I could have gotten back. Not that long. But the door gunner was saying, "We have to get him to the hospital now. He's got to go. He's not going to make it." So again, I made a decision that I had to live with, and it haunted me for a while. Initially was telling this guy, "Get back, get away from the helicopter with that girl." And I took off, got that soldier to the hospital, saved his life. He had some trauma to his head from the explosion. But I didn't know at the time if the girl was going to make it or not. I just felt she was not. And later I found out from the ground team that was there that as I took off, that girl died. So was it the right decision? It was a tough decision. But in my heart, I know it was probably the right decision. Because if I would have taken her, he could have died, and she would have died en route.
But you didn't know that at the time.
I didn't know it.
You had a feeling, and you're thinking, here's a young, helpless 7-year-old that has no business being in a war zone, and she's about to lose her life. The soldier kind of knew what he was getting into. You have a responsibility to both as a human, but you have a responsibility to that soldier as part of the coalition force that you're there to protect.
That's why we're there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough decision where you're making a decision of life and death, and you're choosing who's going to live and who's not going to live.
Yeah.
There's no good answer there. It's the lesser of two evils that you end up choosing. I think often of, in particular, soldiers on the ground. I've been in combat. I haven't faced decisions to that magnitude, I don't think. I mean, I've taken a life before. I've been in those kind of environments, and those weigh on you. But in the instant like that, when you're on the ground and you're, like I say, your buddy's pink body is in, one of your friends is hurt. You have all these emotions of anger, fear, frustration, and loss all at once, and you're asked to make that kind of a decision. It's really difficult.
It is
a decision.
And later on, we debrief every mission, just like obviously you do. After a mission is complete, you got to go back and you got to debrief with your team and everybody. Well, later on that evening, we debriefed, and the ground guys came over with us to do a debrief to thank us, for helping them. And the guy said, "That was a tough decision for you to make. Everybody, regardless if it was an American or not, everybody will focus on the little child first, and or like a woman. What are you going to do? You're going to protect a woman before you protect a guy." So they said, that was a tough decision. And they said, I'm glad I didn't have to make the decision.
Yeah.
But as you said, we're there to protect and serve the rest of our coalition forces, our soldiers. And my real job was there to protect the ambassador. But when the ambassador was safe, I can go out and help other forces, coalition forces.
Now, did you ever find out why that 7-year-old girl was hurt? Was she hurt from the IED?
Yes. She was hurt from the explosion. A lot of the shrapnel went all over it, and it almost cut her in half.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And I believe that was her grandfather. That, from what I remember, it was her grandfather that was trying to get me, because you could see the look of despair on his face and tears in his face when he got close to me. And he just wanted somebody to help that girl. And then I could remember just right now, just close my eyes, I could see his face when I told him to get away from the aircraft.
Yeah, there's no making that right. You make the right decision, but there's no making that right for that grandfather and for that little girl.
So for me, that was one of my most difficult decisions in 5.5 years in Iraq. You know, there's a lot of other tough decisions, but for me, that was one of my toughest ones, because in my mind, because I have granddaughters and they were about the same age. And all I could think of was, if I was my granddaughter, what would I want somebody to do for me? So
you had another experience in Iraq that we've talked about before, and I wanted to just share about being the boss. As the boss, how much risk do you take versus how much risk do you levy onto your team, and how do you approach it? And again, you were doing it under severe, I would say, emotional duress because of what had happened with your brother. You want to share that?
Yeah. Well, this one particular day in January 2007, we had to move a diplomat in the morning to a site out in the red zone, bad area, and she had to go to a meeting, which we didn't know. The night prior, she was told to cancel the mission because Intel was telling everybody that there's a possible built-up complex attack on that particular venue, and they're going after her. And we didn't get that word at the last minute, or else I would have canceled the mission. So I find out after the fact. So the next morning, we put the teams together, escort the convoy, because she's in a convoy of vehicles, about 6 or 7 vehicles, goes out to her venue, gets delivered safely, helicopters come back. But when the helicopters got back, I get a call on my phone from the embassy saying that there's got to get back out there, get the diplomat, because there's an attack going on. And it was 700 to 1,000 insurgents on that complex attack that they were briefed on, and they were going after it. They're going to kill this diplomat. And so what I did is I spooled up the team, and the initial team was my brother, one helicopter, and another guy, another helicopter. They had 2 helicopters going out. I sent them out. I'm talking to the ambassador, or excuse me, the embassy, and telling them, hey, we're on our way. We'll get out there. We'll get her back. So they took off. That 2 aircraft took off. Now I'm monitoring the whole situation on the radio. As a program manager, I was the boss of all the guys there, civilian guys. And I would never send somebody out to do a mission that I wouldn't do. And so I always went on just about all the missions, because all the great leaders I had in the military, they live by example.
They live from the front, yeah.
Yeah, they live from front. And obviously you have some bad leaders, and so you just kind of ignore them, and you always take away the things that you thought were great from great leaders. And so I try to implement those things that I learned in the 30 years in the military to be that boss and program manager running a lot of guys at an aviation group there in Iraq. So they get out there over this, what the venue is for this diplomat, to try to escort the team back. So they're going to put her back in the convoy, and then the little bird's going to escort her back. Typically, we fly over the convoy, and they'll shoot at us first before they shoot the convoy. And that way we can return fire, keep the convoy going, and we can suppress the target. Well, as soon as they got to the venue, I heard on the radio, the door gunner got shot. So in the lead aircraft, the left door gunner took a round to his head, and literally it killed him. But he fell out of the aircraft, out of the little bird, but he was tethered to it. So the pilot, close friend of mine, hovered away to a burned out building and lowered the aircraft down, got out and put the guy back inside the aircraft, flew him to the hospital. While that was happening, I heard on my radio, I told my guys, push my aircraft out of the hangar, let's go. We got to go support these guys, do security, cover, whatever it may be. So pushed my aircraft out. I'm still listening to them, cranked it up, took off. And as I'm taking off, they're landing at the hospital pad, well, cash pad in the green zone. And I'm orbiting as the team landed, let that guy out of the aircraft. Then I immediately told everybody return back to the LZ. And then we'll land and then we'll debrief and we'll sort it out. So we all came back. And I told the guy with the aircraft that had the door gunner shot, I said, I want you to land in front of the hangar. Because the whole aircraft was covered with blood and everything else when the guy got shot. So I had him land in front of the hangar, and my brother and I, in his aircraft, we landed off to the side. Shut the aircraft down, walked over to my friend, and you could see the look in his face, when people say you have that deer in the headlight look. He just...
A 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, he just put a guy in there that got most of his head shot off back in the aircraft. And not only that, because the left door gunner sits real close to the left pilot, when he got shot, my friend's left side of his body was covered in blood. I mean, his whole body was just soaked in blood. And so I'm looking at him, and I said, you need to clean up your aircraft and wash it out, get it ready for the next mission. Not telling him he's not going on another mission, because I didn't want to say that. I just wanted him to
stay engaged.
Stay engaged. I just wanted, hey, you clean your aircraft. I got it from here. And while I'm doing that, I'm getting a call from the embassy again. Get out there. We've got to get her back. So I said, okay, got it. And I told my buddy, get your aircraft cleaned out. We'll be back, and then we'll sort this out, debrief, and then we'll be ready to go again. So I told my brother, let's go. So we ran to our aircraft. Our team was running. And one of the other things that kind of haunts me a little bit is when I jumped in the aircraft, starting it up, I wasn't even buckled in or anything. I'm just starting it up. And as soon as I got it started, and about that time, I look off to my right, the right door gunner's jumping in, and he thought he was getting in the right aircraft. His nickname was War Baby. And he thought he was getting to the right aircraft because my brother and I looked the same. So he thought he was getting my brother's aircraft because it was my brother's door gunner. And I said, hey, War Baby, wrong aircraft. He looked at me, took off, ran over to my brother's aircraft. So
did you guys fly with 2 door gunners or 1?
2.
Okay.
1 on each side. And they sit very close to the pilot. I mean,
Whenever's not big. Yeah.
No, you can touch each other. So he jumps out, runs over to my brother's aircraft, jumps in, and then I take off. They follow me. Well, we get out to that venue with the diplomats at. And as we're coming over to the venue, I'm having a co-pilot fly. We're coming over the venue, and I have my M4 out the door, my weapon out the door, because we know it's hot. People are getting shot. Door gunners are ready, spooled up, ready to shoot. And I have my weapon out, co-pilot's flying. And just as we got to the venue, on the radio, my brother's voice, I heard him say, I'm hit, I'm going back. There's a lot of automatic fire. I mean, imagine 700 plus guys shooting at you with AKs and everything else.
And you're a prime target, sitting over the target, and you're also a high threat to them.
And we're only 50, 75 feet off the ground because we fly low through the city. And so as soon as we got to that venue, the radio conversation I heard from my brother was, I'm hit, I'm going back. And I told my co-pilot, spin it around. Let's find out where he's at. Because I thought, we could turn a little bird around in a second. So he flipped that thing around. I couldn't find my brother. And I thought, where'd he go? I thought perhaps when he said, I'm hit, I'm going back, he's going to fly back to the green zone. About a 3-minute flight from where we were. And so I said, hey, let's go down back through the green zone so we can find him if he's down somewhere in case his radio's dead and he can't talk anymore. And so we went circling around looking for him. Couldn't find him. So I came back to the venue, and now we're going up and down the street. We're getting shot at. And a ton of small arms fire. The aircraft got all kinds of bullet holes in it as we're flying. And I kept flying back and forth up and down the street by the venue. And a couple of the times that we flew, we could hear, or I could feel the concussion of a very large gun, which we found out later was a Dishka, which is a 12.7, like a 50 cal.
50 cal, yeah.
What the guy was doing as we flew, he was in the back of a truck, and he'd pull the canvas off as we passed him. He'd shoot, put the canvas, so he couldn't see the guy. And I told my door gunner, which was a former Navy SEAL, and I said, hey, that gun's got to be below us. Can you see it? He goes, no, I can't see it. I said, I can feel the concussion off the gun. So anyway, we kept flying around, and then we took a couple hard hits, and the aircraft we knew it was coming out of the sky. So I told co-pilot, he said, we're going down. I said, hey, try to nurse it over, just a block over, which is like 100 yards, not that far. Nurse it over there because there's that hospital We can put it down in there and then take a look at the aircraft. So he nurses it over. And as we're coming down in this hospital compound, fenced in, it's about half the size of a football field. There's I think it was about a 14-story foot building that we came next to. And I always have the Iraqi police up there. They're always scouting out looking. And I thought, well, those guys are up there. They can pull security as we're coming down. And the door gunners, I said, when we get the ground, get out, pull security. We'll take a look at the aircraft. As we're coming in, we landed. Door gunners jump out. I jump out. And I told them, shut the aircraft down. And as the aircraft's winding down, I'm walking past the tail boom and everything. You can see all the bullet holes. I get to the other side. I look up at the building where the Iraqi police were.
Yeah.
And they're pointing us out to the insurgents that are running at us. So we figured about 150 guys were running towards where we were.
Wow.
And we have a fence between us. But
yeah, a fence and 3 clips of
no
5.56.
Yeah. So we have our basic load. The door gunners have a lot, but there's no way that possibly 4 of us can hold off 150 or more if there was more. I don't know.
Yeah.
We just knew there was a lot running. And so I told the door gunners to get back in, told the pilot trying to crank this back up. When I look at the blades, I'll back up a second. So when I did the inspection, before I told them this, we have 5 blades. 3 of the blades were damaged really bad with that 50 cal hole through it. 1 blade, where it mounts to the hub of the aircraft, it was shot right there and had a huge hole in it. That blade, I don't even know how it stayed on, because where it mounted had a hole where it mounted. And I thought, that blade's not going to stay on. And I thought, the only option we have is try to start it, crank it up, and try to get out of here. I told him, crank it up, let's go. And I jumped in last. And as he's cranking, we're bouncing because it's, the balance of the aircraft is not balanced anymore. And as we're moving it and taking off, and I said, just get it over this 1-story building, hit the river, and just fly it back, 3-minute flight along the river, and stay low in case we lose the blade and the aircraft comes apart. We land in the water, at least it won't be so high up in the air.
Yeah.
So he does that, gets over the building. About the time we get over the building, my friend that I said, stand down, clean your aircraft, he was listening to all the radio traffic. Aircraft down, my brother shot down, and now I'm shot down for the most part. And he cranked up his aircraft and hit it out there. And as I'm pulling out of that site, the co-pilot's flying. As I'm pulling out of sight, my weapon's out the door. Door gunners got their weapons out. And that guy came zipping over the top, pulling security for us, and followed us back to the green zone. So as we're going back to the green zone, about a 3-minute flight, I call and say, look, we're coming in for basically an emergency landing. I need 3 new blades. I got to get back out there. I need 3 blades. If we make it, I need 3 blades. So anyway, we do make it. It was a rough. They changed and gave me 3 new blades in less than 10 minutes. And I was in the air again. From the time we touched down, 3 new blades. As they were putting new blades on, I'm talking to the embassy, telling them I'm headed back out there. I got to go find a little bird. I need a UAV overhead. I needed Apache headed this direction. I needed help because there's a big firefight going on. So we take off. I'm searching again. We're back into the firefight. And I'm trying to find my brother aircraft because obviously he wasn't at the LZ and he's somewhere in Baghdad, shot down. So I'm circling, and then we see an American soldier on the ground pointing like this. And we figure he's trying to tell us where to go. So we go towards the firefight. Now here's a major road, and on one side of the road, all the Americans and the Blackwater security teams and some American forces showed up now, and then all the bad guys were on the other side of the road in all these big buildings shooting at us, and they're shooting back, right? So we come over, and I tell the co-pilot, put me down at that spot right there. I was pointing, put me down, and he goes, boss, I can't put you down in the street right there. It's a firefight. I said, put me down in the street and you guys leave. He goes, we're not going to leave you. I said, put me down the street and get out of here. I'll find my own way back to the green zone, but I'm going to go find that crew. And, one's my brother. So he puts me down, very hesitantly. He puts me down in a firefight right there at the firefight, puts me down. And as I'm disconnecting my headset to jump out, I grab my weapon and I tell him, you guys get out of here. I'll find my own way back to the green zone. At that point, people didn't know what was really in my mind. I didn't think I was going to come back to start with. All I thought was,
I got to be with my brother. I got to find my brother.
I've got to find my brother, and I hope I can live long enough to get to his site to find him. And I thought, literally, honestly, I never thought I'd get out of that. So I disconnect, and I tell him, get out of here. And he says, no. He leaves the aircraft at 100% RPM in case he has to get out of there, takes his weapon out the door. The other right door gunner gets out, pulls security to the back because bad guys are everywhere. I start walking, and as I disconnect and start walking, it's just like, to me, it happened yesterday. And you see these kind of things in movies or shows. As I took that first step, it looked like I had a little cloud, a white cloud around me, and all I could see was my wife's face in that cloud, just her face, and mouthing. I couldn't hear nothing, just mouthing, I love you. Then all of a sudden it was gone. But I'm walking down the street, and they're shooting. And the left door gunner says, boss, you're not going by yourself. So he followed me. So we're walking down the street, and one of the other things that had happened during that time in RPG, from what I told, my mind wasn't focused on that. RPG was shot, landed off to the side of the aircraft, and we were engulfed in a bunch of smoke, shrapnel, and stuff. Yeah. Well, down the road, maybe 50 yards or so down the road, one of the Blackwater vehicles is a bulletproof vehicle. They call it a Mamba. It's a white vehicle, bulletproof, got a turret on top. Well, they were inside shooting because they're getting shot at so much. This guy, his name is Tommy. He looked, saw the aircraft. He literally thought the aircraft got shot down. He didn't realize we just landed. I was going to go. Then he saw me getting out, an explosion, aircraft covered. He thought they just blew the helicopter up because he didn't see anything anymore. And then he sees me walking out of this cloud of dust and stuff. He goes, what is this guy doing? You know,
Dan's crazy.
He's walking down the road in a firefight, not running, just walking. And I'm walking fast, but I'm walking. So he jumps out of the inside of his protected vehicle, gets up on top of the turret. He says, I got to do something to help this guy. So he's shooting. He's got a machine gun, an M240, and he's shooting. And then I walked up, and then there was a military striker vehicle, like a tank. And these guys were shooting. There was two guys. The vehicle was facing the buildings, and there was two guys on the left rear side, and there was a guy laying on the right side as I approached him. As I approached him, he was shooting, and I reached down, tapped him on the helmet. And they looked up at me, stopped shooting, looked up at me, he goes, sir, what are you doing here? I said, where are those bodies at? He goes, what? They're in the alley back here. We put them in body bags. And I said, okay. And he says, you got to go. I said, no, I'm going to go check on the bodies. Anyway, he stopped shooting long enough to tell me where the guys were, and he went back to shooting. Then I walked into an alley with my door gunner. The two bodies were laying like this, two here as we approached and two here. So as I approached them, I started getting this real knot in my gut, thinking, I don't know. We were just told they were Westerners. They don't know if they're my guys, because a lot of people were getting shot at there. And I thought, I hope, in a way, I don't want them to be my guys. I want my brother to be somebody
else.
Yeah. I look at it and think, that's kind of like a bad wishing for somebody else to have died. That's what went through my mind. I hope that's not my guys. And I got there, and I told my door gunner, you check the two bodies on this side, and I'll check these two. I knelt down by the first body bag. I hesitated for a second, and I unzipped it, and I saw my friend from the 160th. He's working for me, but he's a Blackwater guy, works for me. And I knew these four guys were mine, and one of these is my brother. So I zipped his body bag back up. I kind of kneeled over and walked over to the other body bag. So it's laying here, and I got to the head of it, and I unzipped it, and that was my brother. And he was looking, his body's laying there, and he's looking towards me. And at that moment, I just got a real sick feeling, in my gut.
I can't imagine.
And then what I did was I unzipped the body bag all the way because the insurgents had him. They had him in a wheelbarrow, and there was a firefight trying to get them back. There was a firefight, and they dropped the bodies and took off. And then that's how we got the bodies back, put them in the body bag. So when I unzipped it all the way, I wanted to make sure, because the insurgents had him, that they didn't mutilate his body. I don't know why, but there's nothing I could have done.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure my brother's body was complete there. and I unzipped it all the way he was. I zipped it back up to his head. Then I got around to the head of him, and I just picked his head up. Because remember, his head is looking like this. I'm on this side. So I get over and picked his head up, and I kissed him on the forehead and said, I'm sorry. And as soon as I did that, I looked at my hand, and I started going like this. I said, oh, no. Because the insurgents had shot him in the head twice here. And he had a big hole here, and I didn't realize it. And most of the ring matter was in my hand. And so I was going like this, trying to get it off of me. So anyway, I zipped his body bag up, knew they were my guys. I walked back out to the striker, like that tank, told that major, said, those are my guys. Get them in your vehicle and get them to the green zone. He goes, sir, I get them out of here. We'll get them to the green zone. You've got to get out of here because they're still shooting. So I walked back to the helicopter and flew back. So now some big decisions I had to make that were difficult. One, I'll back up to that mission. My brother was not supposed to be there. So this was January 3rd. My brother was supposed to have left in December, the month prior, just prior to Christmas, to go home. But as a program manager, I always had a tough time filling all the pilot slots. I didn't ask my brother to stay longer.
But he knew you had a tough time.
I asked others, though. I did. I asked others, hey, you guys, anybody want to volunteer to stay? I never asked my brother one time. He saw that. And he goes up to me, he said, I'll stay. I said, no, Art, you need to get home. And he goes, no, I'll stay. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah. So he stayed. And if he wouldn't stay, obviously he wouldn't have
be here now.
So that decision I made, haunts me to this day. I made a decision to let him stay. And I knew better. For some reason, I just knew he needs to go home. But I did. I let him stay. Then
at the moment, you didn't have an option.
No, I didn't, because I was short people. And he volunteered to stay and to stay and help me out. And the decisions I had to make were difficult. After that was, one, I had to call the family members. I had to call. First one I called was my wife and said, hey, look, Art's not here anymore. Told her what happened. And then I called my mother, and my mother talks a lot. And when I said, Art's not here anymore, he was shot down and killed in combat, she never said another word. I thought the phone went dead. And then I had to call his wife and explain to her what happened. For me, a lot of the decisions you make, backing up to when I told the co-pilot to land, some people have questioned me over that. And some people will say, you did the right thing. However, I don't know if I'd have done that, because you land in a firefight, chances are very slim that you're going to make it. You can land in the middle of a firefight and walk through a firefight to go find your guys. But it's like a cliche. People always say, you never leave nobody behind. Mm-hmm. I was not about to leave my guys. If those were my guys, I wasn't going to leave them, because I knew, being there 5.5 years, when the insurgents would catch a Westerner coalition force,
it was not pretty.
It was not. They cut their head off and threw the body in the river. I don't want to say every day, but often I would see a body float in the river, and then I would call it in, and then they'd go try to get the body. And it was a Westerner. If they captured somebody or in a fire killed them, they cut the head off and throw them into the, and you see bodies floating down the river all the time. And I didn't want that to happen. And that's why, in my mind, my focus was, I'm finding my brother. Was it a good decision? I don't know. But you make decisions, and as you had to, being an attack pilot, you make decisions at that moment, and it's less than a second. You got to, I'm doing this, and that's what it's going to be. And then you have to live with it, and hopefully it's the right decision you make. For me, I felt it was the right decision. Other guys said, I'd have done the same thing for you. If it was my brother, I would have done the same thing. Some guys said, yeah, you risked a crew. You put them down in a hot spot, you risked a crew. But I did.
I guarantee you that the entire crew never said a word to you about it, or never criticized you for it.
No.
Because they were where they wanted to be.
No. And it was a few days later, before I went back to get my brother back to California to bury him, because they had asked me in the embassy, are you going to go back? And here's another decision. Are you going to send your brother's body back to the 5 guys actually? We're going to send him back to the U.S. and you want to escort your brother's body back. I said, no, we got a lot of stuff going on here. He said, you don't want to go back with your brother? So the decision I made was, no, there's nothing I can do for my brother right now. We'll send him back, and when he's ready, I'll fly back and I'll escort his body from Dover down to California to bury him.
Yeah.
And they're going, they couldn't believe that I wouldn't want to escort my brother all the way back. There was nothing I can do. But I had guys I felt depended on me as the program manager to keep things going on, because that firefight went on for 4.5 hours or more. And we still had, that was the bad time of the year. We had attacks every day, and I felt I just needed to be there. And so I stayed for a few more days until
it was time.
So,
yeah, for me, part of that decision would be faith-based, as I'm sure it was for you. I think of, scripture, he is not here, he is risen.
Yeah.
And, everybody has their own views about a dead body, and you treat it with respect and everything, but that individual's not there anymore. And so how do you treat them? How are you most respectful to them? And those are, again, stressful situation. There is no winning, but there's still decisions that have to be made. And so that's when you rely on, and I think I were talking about this before the show, you rely on your faith, you rely on decisions you made beforehand and obligations that you agreed to beforehand, instead of having to make every single decision in the heat of the moment. You never expect to be in that situation, but you live your life and you orient yourself in a way to where you partially already made the decision going forward.
Well, in special ops, and I'm sure in your, you plan a mission, and then you always plan contingencies for missions. And the contingencies, there's more contingencies for a mission than there is for the actual mission to accomplish.
Yeah.
So in life, you do the same thing. What if I'm out there flying, this happens? What am I going to do? If somebody goes down, how am I going to react? What am I going to do for those guys? But as you mentioned, it is my faith of what I believe in and the leadership that I learned through other commanders that I really enjoyed working for. I take some of the leadership traits and my faith, and I knew at that moment when I found my brother and he had been killed, I thought, well, my brother's in a better place now. There's nothing I can do for my brother now other than get him home. And so I knew he was in a better place, and he was doing what he wanted to do. But you go back to that decision, should I let him stay or not? And,
yeah, I remember listening to a story from George Walker Bush as a young carrier pilot, and they had a guy crash land on the carrier and killed a couple of guys and dismembered a couple of guys. And the chief petty officer that's running the flight line, his response was, and if you just take it at face value, very, very callous and grotesque. He said, get these guts off the flight line. We've got aircraft to launch.
Yeah.
And you think of those individuals that lost their lives, but in the bigger picture, he had a mission to run, and he had everyone else to protect, because if getting an aircraft airborne, that entire carrier could have gone ablaze, and everyone would have lost their life. Taking it to the extreme, but he understood the importance of his mission. There would be a time to mourn. There would be a time to take care of those individuals and pay them their respects. But right then was not the time.
That's exactly how I look at it. This is not the time for me. And people would ask me, man, how can you go back out? Your brother just got killed. I said, we have a mission to do. We all have to go out and still protect people. We can't sit there and focus on what's happened. There's nothing we can do. We can't change the outcome right now. We just got to continue with our mission and do the best we can to help the rest of the people, that are out there in harm's way. We can't sit here and mourn for people right now. That time, as you said, will come. There will be a time for that later.
If it's not worth the risk in the first place, I'm not going to do it. If it's not, you're never going to see me mountain biking down a single track trail in Moab, where if you fall, it's a guaranteed broken bone or something like that. For me, that's not worth it. No. I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
But something like what we're talking about, where you feel like, I don't want to say your cause is just, but you have a mission to execute, and you have brothers in arms and sisters in arms to protect. You wouldn't even be there if you didn't feel like you were doing the right thing. And if you're going to be there, you're going to do it right. You're not going to do it in a half-baked manner.
No. And, the 5.5 years I was there, we protected a lot of diplomats in that 5.5 years. And I can say to this day, to include that day, not one diplomat that we ever protected ever got a scratch on them, because we finally got her back safely. Now, I lost 5 guys, but we did our job. And every day was a challenging day for us, because we flew every day. Every day we flew. And if the ambassador was not moving, I made an agreement with the embassy. Our job was protect the ambassador, fly over his convoy, And I thought, well, we have a great asset here. If you're not moving, can I use it for other things? And so we developed a QRF, quick reaction force.
Mm-hmm.
And they let me, if I heard gunfire or whatever out there, I can send my guys out and support them if something needed. Because the military, from what I learned, if a guy on the ground was in contact and wanted an Apache for support or somebody else like that, it could take up to 20 minutes to get the approval through their chain of command. I was the chain of command. I was the only source that made that decision. Well, I got to
make
go.
a quick decision and
I
go.
made a decision and we would go. And so once I developed that QRF, we started getting calls from all coalition forces. I'm talking Australians, British, Poland, French, everybody, because they knew they can count on us being there in less than just a few minutes. We could get out there and get them back in the green zone, escorting them and suppress the target. So the decisions we were making, or I was making, was based on our experience, because all our guys were former special ops guys, every one of them, and they were there to do our job, to protect the coalition forces, the ambassador, and I felt we did a great job. But some of the decisions were some tough ones to make.
Yeah, I bet. Well, so last thing, we've talked about combat operations. We've talked about really hard decisions that are a matter of life and death. And, what about real life? And for you, that has been real life. That has been what you've dealt with. But you've also made decisions where you've had to weigh, am I here with my family or am I doing this, where you're going to lose either way? How do you make those decisions? How does a person, how does John Smith from Peoria, Illinois, make that decision, with regard to his family and his company and how he's managing his life?
Well, and that's a great question. And I can only speak for me, and I've seen other guys have a lot of turmoil with that and making decisions, going somewhere, leaving their family. However, I have a very supporting wife. We spent 30 years in the Army together, been all over the world, and most of all my career was in special operations. And my last job was, as you had mentioned, I was with the Night Stalkers, the Task Force 160. We carried, back then in them days, we had a pager. And if you're a flight lead, which I was a flight lead, there's only a handful of flight leads in the organization. If you get a certain code in your phone, your pager, you immediately go. It doesn't matter where you're at. You could be at church, which did happen. You could be driving, going to the show, going out to eat. Didn't matter. You got a page and there was a certain code. You better be at the hangar. You drop what you're doing, you go. And there's many times that my wife and I discussed this for years. She supported me. I don't believe I could have done this without the support, because you can't plan for something that's going to happen, because if a pager goes off, you go. When you get that page or you're told to go, my wife understood that it's your job. She supported me. It's time to go. But yet it was a hard decision to go. I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I got to go. And I don't know when I'll be back, but when I get back, we'll pick up from where we left off. So yes, it's very hard to juggle that kind of a life if you don't have somebody that understands and supports you the whole way. Because in those type of units, sorry to say, but there's many divorces, high divorce rate, very high. Luckily for me, she was always there and she was always supportive. And I saw the look on her face many times that when I said, I got to go, she just gave me a kiss goodbye. And I knew that she didn't want that, but she knew that I had to go.
She had committed to it.
She committed to it. So those decisions, you have to go and you weigh that family. Now, there's been a couple of times that I needed to go somewhere, but I had a family member, like my wife's sick, and I just said, I can't go. And the unit will support you. They know if you're saying, I can't do this, I can't go on this one, there's no questions asked. They know you're not doing it because you just don't want to go.
That comes from a high level of trust both ways.
Yes.
I was thinking about like a CEO who he's managing a company, he's managing the bottom line. And if he's a good CEO and he cares about his people and he's invested in each of them, if he has to lay people off for the good of the company, that's killing him.
Yeah.
It should kill him. It should hurt him that he's doing that. It can't be just a simple numbers game. Or if he's not laying people off and he's, do I keep these people on the payroll at the expense of the overall company? Am I putting the company in jeopardy for something like that? Neither decision is a good decision, or neither decision is without pain. Neither decision, it's not your win-win situation that you always look for, because somebody is going to lose or something is going to lose.
Mhm.
So that's a tough thing. Dan, I appreciate your time. I love listening to your stories, and I'm always inspired by your level of commitment to do the right thing. And you talk about people questioning you. That's always going to happen. People are always going to say, well, he should have done this, or he should have done that, or she should have done this, or should have done that. That's life. When you're the one sitting in the seat and you're dealing with all the stresses of it and all the challenges of the moment right then, you got to make a decision. And that comes from, number one, commitment. Number two, preparation beforehand. And if you're fully vested in your people and the mission, you're going to make a good decision, even if that decision comes with pain. So
It does.
yeah, I appreciate it. So thanks for joining us today for another episode of Commander's Intent. If you got any questions, go to askdereknow.com and we'll have a conversation. Let's continue to become better decision makers for better results, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and continue to follow us. Thank you.
So that's it for today's episode of Commander's Intent Podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will be entered in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private exclusive leadership coaching package with Derek Oaks himself. So head on over to commandersintentpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Derek's leadership guide and join us on the next episode.